Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. As always, we thank our patrons who make this podcast possible. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all you do and all your support.
We certainly do thank you, and without our patrons, we would not be able to have this weekly podcast and to do all the extras that we do aside from this podcast.
Absolutely. And if you are interested in monthly live Zoom trainings that we do, these are full-fledged training sessions. Very unique training sessions. It's once a week. Our next one is coming up on the 15th of November. You can go to patreon.com/speakingout. If you sign up for the $25 or up, you will gain access not only to current live Zoom trainings, but past ones as well, to the recordings. So we encourage you to do that. That is the only place that these trainings take place and are hosted. So if you'd like access.
Pretty special and guaranteed you will not be disappointed with these trainings.
I agree.
Good.
And we've gotten tons of awesome feedback from our patrons.
Yes.
Okay. Today, as of the day that we're recording, it is Election Day. No idea. It's about midday, so no idea what the results are, but we're not going to talk about elections.
Thank you.
We're just saying that.
Yeah, enough about that. Yeah.
Obviously, we're living in very divisive times, and you can see this with politics. I mean, just raging politics on both sides of the aisle and everywhere in between. And a lot of this has permeated so much of your life, and not just that, but just the constant stresses of life and so forth. So we wanted to, in this episode, to talk about probably the one most single important thing that we can all do, not only as advocates, but just as human beings who are placed on this earth with people who might think or believe things wildly different than what we do. There's one thing that I think we can do to kind of restore
faith in humanity.
Faith in humanity.
Yeah.
That we can honor people who've been abused and oppressed. We can meet their needs. On and on and on.
Right.
That one thing is decency. If we exercise decency.
It's an interesting word, Jimmy, because kind of opens the door up to so many different things. But let's narrow it in about what you and I talked about previously. Mm-hmm. What is decency? What are we talking about even?
Yeah, and I want to preface this by saying I know this from experience. When you work with such dark, ugly, horrific crimes, that it's unfathomable that humans are even capable of doing these kinds of things to other humans. But when you hear these things all the time, and when you've been abused, and you know the things that happen to you are up here, it's so much a part of what happened to you that it affects so many different parts of your life.
It does.
It's really easy to go down this path where you want to fight for everybody. You want to grab the bull by the horns, and you just want to go in there and you want to charge, and you want to just rip abusers out of their environment and mess their whole life up and stop them from abusing, and you want to go in and like guns a-blazing and just save the world. And it doesn't work that way.
And by abusing, we're not just talking about childhood sexual abuse. We're talking about every abuse imaginable where people are kind of on the warpath, on
Yeah.
edge constantly. If you say a word that is wrong, if you give a description that is incorrect according to what someone else thinks, they're ready to kind of tap you out all of a
Yeah.
sudden. I've
You and I have experienced that as authors,
big
people who've
time.
blogged a lot,
Oh, yeah.
just having things
Big time.
critiqued and
One word
misconstrued
that is not
constantly.
in tune with what somebody else might be thinking, and man, you become a punching bag for them.
You really hurt me. I'm
Yes.
disappointed in you. I just
And
got that 2 days ago. I
oh,
had somebody approach me and say, I just want you to know I'm really disappointed in you. I'm like, well, get in line.
I'm smiling because I
You
get that
know?
almost daily. When I write something, there will be a lot of people who get it and understand what I'm trying to convey. Then there will always be that few who I'm not saying what is in tune with them. Therefore, they take it very personally and they want to box me out of the ring.
Yeah.
And nothing was meant that way.
Yeah.
So people are just in general anymore on the defense.
They are.
Yeah.
And on the offense.
Yeah.
And
Both.
I feel like
Right.
there's this explosive environment. And I mean, just you name an issue. And you have right now in the political climate that certainly has permeated the advocacy realm. It's abortion. It's women's rights. It's equal rights. It's trans rights. It's black rights. It's and not that those things aren't important at all. And I would never
Right.
argue that. But when we start just going down all these paths wildly,
I think, yeah, yes, that's
we
it.
start to lose a part of us because we see the opposite of what we're advocating for. We see the opposite, and we see people who are racist. We
Right.
see people who are
That's
abusive. We see people who are horrific Christians, horrific Christian leaders. We see churches just imploding on themselves and driving people out. We see those things when we advocate for the opposite.
right.
And so here's my point, is that we begin to focus so much on that we forget to be decent to people.
We forget that there are decent people, there are decent churches,
absolutely.
there are decent businessmen, there are decent teachers, there
Mm-hmm.
are decent teenagers and youth, and on and on and on we go.
Absolutely.
When we keep poking holes in everything, sometimes, yeah, the ugly pours out, but we're not preserving the good. We're not preserving the decent by doing that.
Right.
So there's a right way and a wrong way to go about advocating for whatever it is we want to advocate for while doing the decent thing and preserving what is good and right and moral and just and true and pure, and on we go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of a couple cases, just personal cases, of where people were decent to me, and just decent in general. And because I hear this constant drumbeat that America, this country sucks, or this country's the greatest in the world, and everybody else sucks, and health care and abortion, and it's just this constant screaming from every corner, and we forget that there are so many people around the world who are living in utter desolation and desperation.
Right.
And one of those people, you and I are friends with, and it's this gentleman from Haiti who is just the nicest guy in the world. He's a preacher. I consider him a really good friend. And right now Haiti is just in shambles.
It's a mess.
They're
It
paying
is.
upwards of $20+ per gallon of gasoline. If they can even get gasoline. Most of the places they can't get
And
gas
how
or
do they
diesel.
get $20?
And the average pay
Yeah.
for a full day's work, a 10, 12-hour day work, the average pay is $2 per day. So you're talking $20 for 1 gallon of gas.
Plus, unemployment rate is up near 85% now
Right.
for the country, and
Right.
it's like, so
Because they
it's
rely on tourism.
Right.
It's an island that relies on tourism,
sure.
it's just they're to the point where literally a starving nation is now really starving. Cholera, this latest cholera outbreak is absolutely sweeping the nation. Their government is in absolute shambles because of the assassination of their president. It still hasn't
Settled.
stabilized.
No, not at all.
Gangs have officially overrun the country. In fact, I was just talking to one of my sisters. She and her husband lived in Haiti for 4 years, and she said, "Hey, remember when you were there in 2019?" And we went into that one little grocery store with with my
Yeah.
daughter. She was 8 years old at the time, and we went in this store, and they had one little deep freezer in the whole store, and they had ice cream. And we went in and we treated the kids to ice cream. And she said, "You remember that grocery store?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "We just saw pictures of a security guard who was shot dead right in that grocery store. Probably the same guy who was there when we went." They can't get food. I mean, everything has shut down because the gangs stopped the fuel supply to the whole country, and so there's no
Which
fuel.
think of what would
That
happen
drives
in
everything.
our nation if our fuel supply stopped.
Right.
There's no trucking, there's
Right.
no airlines, there's
That's right.
no, everything comes to a halt.
So I
obviously.
mean, they're in absolute desperation, like we've never seen, and we've been
We've
there when
never-
I thought
right.
was a pretty
I
hard
thought it was
time, but
terrible,
that was
yes.
nothing compared to what it
Right.
is now. And so my point is, our friend contacts me every single day, and he says, "Brother, how are you doing? How's your sister doing?" My sister, who was in the hospital
Sick,
for 7 months.
yeah.
"How's your sister doing? How's your family doing? How is your wife and your children?" Every day.
Decent. He's a decent
He's
man.
a 100%
He is.
decent human being. He's
is.
kind. He's compassionate.
Yes,
He's
yes.
thoughtful. He tells me,
I could see his smile actually
Yep.
right now. When I was there talking with him the last time, their well had been broken into, I guess, and
Yeah, parts
was
were
not
stolen off
working.
of it,
Parts
yeah.
were stolen. He still wore his smile, even though they desperately needed that well. Desperately needed it. Did not have the money for repairs, but he still smiled.
yeah,
And I'm sure
And-
if we called him or got a hold of him right now, he would still be his joyful self.
yep,
Because I think he lives in a deeper place than what most of us do. Most of us are surface people. We really are when you think about it. We expect our needs to be fulfilled 100% instantly.
yeah.
And if they're not, we grumble, we get downright nasty, actually. We do.
But he's just so
sadly.
thankful. And,
Yes.
twice this year, that same well broke. And 2 different times, I promised him that we would find money to fix it. And within less than 24 hours, both times, we had the money raised and sent the money.
Which
I wired
you
the money.
called on some decent people.
Absolutely.
And they
Absolutely.
responded in a decent, wonderful way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And these are people who are not
Yeah.
wealthy.
Right.
And they're people who reach deep in their pockets and they're
Right.
like, "You know what? I'll give up some luxuries to make sure that these people have
Right.
water."
Right.
And so, anyway, we raised that money 2 different times, and both times, when they repaired the well, he sent just loads of pictures, and then he sent videos. And this is a very Haitian thing, but he flipped the camera and did a selfie video, and he knelt down at the prayer at the well, and he prayed, and he said, "Brothers and sisters," he said, he calls everybody brother and sister,
Right.
His brothers and sisters, and he has that big grin on his face, and
Always,
somebody's
yeah.
pumping it in the background, and he goes, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, God, thank you for water, because water is life."
Right.
And the man's in tears. And I thought, here's a guy who has nothing, who's just
So
exudes
thankful.
decency.
So thankful. He
Yeah.
is.
And he's thoughtful and he's
yes.
kind. So that's what I'm talking about,
Right.
And I'm not saying like, it's not okay to protest injustices and things like that. Not at all. But don't forget, in the midst of that, that the single most important thing that we can do to lighten somebody's load, to make their day better, to make them feel human again, is to
Right.
exercise decency,
Right.
to be kind to them, to be compassionate, to be caring, to be thoughtful, to step in and just say, I don't know what I can do, but I'm here for
But
you.
I was going to say simply be there. We've lost that so much. I did a video this week for my Facebook page, but I talk about that. Technology kind of entered the picture and destroyed a lot of that closeness that we had. We can use it for good or bad. I mean,
Sure.
without technology, you wouldn't be able to correspond with this man in Haiti. And by the way, Haitians, almost all of them do have cell phones. They are not exorbitant in price. And I think their cell phone charges are like 3 cents for
Yeah, they're dirt
bukus
cheap.
of minutes. Yeah. So it's not like he's doing something extravagant. That's the only means that they have of communicating with others. But we have lost the art, the blessing, the decency, whatever you want to call it, of simply being there for people. Sometimes we don't need to give anything. I think we're so afraid, gee, they'll expect me to give them $500 to help them.
It costs nothing to be decent to
No,
other people.
often what we need is somebody simply showing up and to sit with
Yeah.
us. I think of Job often. And when Job was at his lowest, he needed just a friend nearby, not to swoop him away, not to take his pain away. That wasn't possible, but just to be there. And there's no better feeling than knowing you're not alone.
Yeah,
You are
absolutely.
not alone in this life. We
Yeah.
need that. And we're losing that. And often, like you said, we pull the shade down and we see only darkness. We haven't lifted it to see there's one heck of a lot of light out there yet.
Yeah.
There are good people around, good churches, good ministers, good people. And we're losing it with that.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
I miss the days when that wasn't controversial to say that, where you
Yeah.
didn't get blasted. Well, but the church is corrupt to the core.
Yeah,
Or like I put a post before that, like everything's just so charged all the time. I feel like, and it's
Yeah.
like you can't say something nice to build somebody up without being attacked.
Right.
And I remember I had put a post on Facebook about I was like, a lot of these injustices with the police officers, it's horrific. It's terrible. Police officers that break the law, that use excessive force, they should be in prison,
Right.
100%. And
I
so
agree.
I put a post about that,
Totally
and I was like,
agree.
but
Right.
don't forget that there are a lot of really good cops who detest
Yes.
these other cops.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness! Like I think
know,
I ended up
yeah.
having to delete that post because it was, we don't want to hear about good cops, and I'm like, why is that so offensive?
It's
To the point where you attack somebody
Yeah.
relentlessly, and I'm like, you're becoming the bad cop. 'Cause
there's been such a
you're
shift
so aggressive
in
and nasty.
society now. Sadly, I have a friend, a classmate, who is with politics makes her crazy, and she does and says really crazy things. I
Oh, it
had a
makes people go
dream
nuts.
about her last night that I was cringing because she was yelling at me about this election today. And I woke up this morning and I thought, oh my word, really? I'm that, like, I won't say anything pro con politics because
Right.
I know you're going to get it from either side.
I voted today.
Which, yeah,
I'm not
I
wearing
did
my
too.
sticker. I
Yeah.
didn't post on Facebook that
No,
I voted.
didn't either.
You know what I mean? Like
Quietly,
at the end
yeah.
of the day, that
But-
doesn't improve somebody
Ooh.
else's life.
No,
If
but
they know whether I voted or not, like doesn't improve
we
their
are
life.
a very charged people anymore, and we're pushing forward. And sometimes I think we've grabbed the sword and don't know who or what we're stabbing.
Yeah.
We've lost track of it.
Yeah. So, that decency though, like I think about all these survivors who I don't want to harp on the advocacy community because it's, you guys know I've mentioned it and I share my beefs with some of the stuff that goes on. And I'm guilty too of doing things that I look back and I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have gone down that route. But, I wonder how many survivors are just suffering in a pile of brokenness and they're just waiting for somebody to reach out and be like,
Just be
it's going to
kind,
be
like you
okay.
said.
Yeah,
Be
like,
kind and give a word of encouragement.
yeah. And I
Yes.
feel like they're like, and I don't feel this is, I've had survivors tell me this. They say we're steering clear of the advocacy community because it's no longer about helping survivors. It's about getting on whatever the next political soapbox
A
is.
platform
And that breaks my
yeah,
heart
yeah.
because there
Right.
are so many millions of people who've endured horrific abuse who are waiting for somebody to just listen to
I
them.
think the words you said, Jimmy, that someone to say it'll be okay.
Yeah.
We all need to hear that at some point in our lives.
Yeah, they
But
don't need to hear how toxic it. They already know
right,
that
they
there's
know
toxicity
that they've
in the
seen
church and,
right,
all
they've
over the
seen
place.
that, experienced it. Now what they need to hear is things are turning better. There's
That's
an
right.
awareness out there, and they need to be shown, grouping us all together, all of us really, need to be shown kindness, respect,
Yeah.
sincerity in asking, when you ask you, Jimmy, how are you? Really, how are you? That type
Yeah.
of thing. And allow, I think you're so right, allow the survivor to speak.
Yeah.
Allow them to talk.
Well, I thought of an incident. I mean, this wasn't abuse or anything like that, but this was several years ago. I saw this car that was broken down, and I had told you about this
Right.
before. It was I was out working for another company. I was selling truck parts, and I was up in Johnstown, 20 miles north of here, and we live in the snow belt. We're up in the mountains. We get, when it snows, it snows. And the roads were, I mean, they weren't freshly plowed, so there's a bunch of
Getting
snow.
nasty, yeah.
It was pretty rough out.
Yes.
And we were getting dumped on pretty hard, and I see this car with the flashers on right in the middle of Scalp Avenue, which is a pretty busy
That's
road.
a very busy road, yes.
And so I just pulled up behind and I put my flashers on, and I did this when I drove truck, and back then, like, that whole community of truckers, we really checked on each other. And if somebody was on
Right.
the side of the road with the flashers on, you'd hear it on the CB radio just nonstop. Hey, are you okay? You need any help?
How
You
it
need me
should
to
be,
stop?
right.
Just
Right.
checking, verbally
Yes.
checking.
Yes.
Do you need anything? And so I didn't even think about it. I just pulled up and put my flashers on, and I start walking up, and I knock on the window, and it's this girl, probably in her, I don't know, early 20s maybe. And I said, hey, I saw you're broken down or stuck or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm broken down. I was like, I just wanted to check on you and make sure you're okay because you're kind of not in a good spot.
Right.
And I was like, do you need me to just sit here till a tow truck shows up? She starts crying, and she's like, she goes, no, I'm okay. I already called. I have somebody on the way. And she goes, I just wanted to thank you. She's like, I've been sitting here for over an hour, and you're the only person who stopped.
Guaranteed, I'll bet she got honked at plenty, yelled at plenty for blocking traffic. And
it's
I know
crazy,
how
like-
that happens. Been in that situation
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
But that's the kind of, those are the
Right.
kinds of things. Like, it didn't cost me anything
No.
to just stop, check on her. She said she was fine. I wished her well, got back
Be
in my truck, and I
kind.
took
Yeah,
off.
simply
Just
be
a
kind.
simple act of
Yes.
kindness.
Ah,
It goes really far. Yesterday I got a call from our vet. We had our 6-month-old kitten spayed almost a week ago. Yesterday I get this phone call, and I didn't recognize the number. I answer it, and this lady was like, hey, this is the vet. I was just checking on Bella to see how she's doing today.
that's
And I was
so
like,
nice. Yeah. That's very
that,
nice. Yes.
like, I hung up and I was
Yes.
smiling, and I was like, that was the nicest thing. And they're super busy in there.
Every vet is super busy right now. I'm thinking back, those of you who have followed this podcast for quite a while now, If you remember back during COVID, Jimmy and I had a whole series about what we could do to help those households who were experiencing, since they were being confined,
Mm-hmm.
extra drinking alcohol, unemployment, verbal abuse on children, supposed sexual abuse because of the confinement. Everything was escalated.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about doing nice little deeds, the decent thing. Pick up the phone, call your neighbor, and say, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
How are the kids? How you guys getting along? Do you need anything? I can sit it on your porch. Or we talked about dropping by, maybe a little bowl of warm soup on the porch since COVID kept us from going in. Just letting people know we're there,
Mm-hmm.
we care. Those little things help defray the big things in
Yeah.
life. I really do think. I get concerned so many times having experienced depression, having seen depression in those that I love, we can slip down that slippery hole really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of abuse survivors live in a state of depression, fear, anxiety, worry.
Mm-hmm.
And we all are in need of that little bit of it. Call it attention, call it kindness, call it decency, whatever. We're in need of that.
Everybody
And
is.
if we would simply slow down, I think, take 5, 10 minutes to do one thing a day, think of how decent
Mm-hmm.
this world would be.
Yeah.
We don't have to conquer the world. Just do one thing a day.
Yeah. I think it becomes so overwhelming that we get and we create anxiety.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Yes.
that's where so many people are right now because they're like life is just really hard. And I think every economist out there says
Oh, yeah.
we haven't even begun to see the beginnings of a hard recession.
Right. People are worried. All people are.
Yeah, and that's here. Inflation is absolutely just out of control, and the Fed's, every report that comes out, it's shown that inflation is not slowing yet, and it's just putting a lot of people in a really hard place, and all of us can feel it. That the cost of everything
Well,
is up. I can't
right.
get heating oil because it's going to cost me
Oh, yeah.
thousands of dollars to get
Right.
oil. So I just ordered another triaxle load of firewood.
Firewood,
So
of course.
our
Right.
house right now is freezing cold. I'm
Now,
not running
think
the
of how
heat.
many families, though, are going to try to heat with wood and coal in our area, and we get brutal winters, by the way. And their homes are going to catch on
And
fire
the little space
because,
heaters, that's
yeah,
the biggest thing. They
exactly.
overload their
Overload
house with those space
everything.
heaters, those electric space heaters.
Right.
People like me who unlike me, people who don't have a wood furnace.
Right.
That's my primary heat.
Well, I keep thinking
I'm very
also,
fortunate.
right. Also, Jimmy, I cannot tell you how many times already I've heard that my kids aren't going to have a Christmas this year. I won't have any money. And I know
Yeah,
some
you
people.
and I just got a message the other day.
Oh, I've
about that
gotten,
from
I
somebody,
have, my phone
their
is full
family
of
member.
them right
Yeah.
now. Can you help me? Do you know where I can get help? And yeah, to some, this might be a nonsense thing, but to parents, it's very
It's
real.
huge.
And that increases everything we talked about, the anxiety, the
Yeah.
temper, the fear, the lashing out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Walmart. It was packed. It was check day. People got their, checks for disability and whatnot, Social Security. Little kids being drug along in all the crowds, and they're crying, fussing. One mother whacked her kid, another one took her kid and just jammed that child down in the cart. People are in need of calmness.
Yeah.
They're in need of somebody to reassure and say, hey, we've lived through times like this. It's going to be a little tight, but we're going to live through it again. And just doing that little bit of encouraging, oh my goodness gracious.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point because I see this a lot in the advocacy community too, where people who have a platform are saying, I'm not giving the church a single red dime, and it's so corrupt. And I'm like, all right, but where are you taking that money that used to go to church? What are you doing? Like, let people know. You don't have to brag about it, but
Right.
but I know these are decent people, so don't tell me what you're not going to do because the church pissed you off or whatever.
Right.
Tell me what you are doing. Like,
Right.
are you going out for the parents who
Right.
legitimately cannot
Can't.
buy
Oh,
their
there
kids
are
presents?
so many that can't.
Do you know how? Do you
so
know?
many that can't.
Do you know how much shame comes along with that? Not being able to
It's
afford a present for
awful.
your kids.
And
That's awful.
you are so right, Jimmy.
Stand in line and,
Yeah,
and quietly give them money and pay for their
I saw
presents.
something today on my way here to your home that I have not seen in a very, very, very long time. I went to unlock the door to the building where I work, and standing on Main Street, digging in the garbage can, this man pulled out every single bag. And I just, it shocked me so much. He was pulling out soda cans, emptying soda out so that he
Trying to
could
get
go
money to
trying to get
recycle.
money to recycle. And I thankfully I work for an organization that helps people. They knock on our door. We have helped really hundreds and hundreds in our community. We give thousands of dollars a year for food banks and whatnot. That's a blessing. But not everybody knows where to go, how to go. But, I think scenes like that will be very common. And,
Yeah.
and we're going to read of shootings and murders and theft going on because parents get desperate to feed their
Well,
children.
I just thought about this, just because I'm wired that way
Yeah.
from being in the trucking industry for so long. This was a problem in our economy back in 2008. There were people siphoning diesel fuel out of
Oh, yeah.
tractor
I
trailer
remember
trucks
when that was
because
going on.
they're
right.
using it for heating oil for
Right.
their home, and that's going to happen a lot. And
It
right
will.
now,
Yes.
there are so many trucking companies that are on the verge of collapse because of the price of diesel fuel.
Right.
I just looked today; it's
Oh,
$6.20 a
I
gallon here
saw
for
it.
diesel
Yeah.
fuel.
Right.
And home heating oil is not far behind that. It's almost $6 a gallon.
So I'm thinking, what can we do and how do we help families of abuse? Or I remember, and I'll share this with everybody, the first winter that I was alone with the girls and your dad he was no longer there. I was the sole breadwinner and whatnot, and we ran out of fuel oil. I was denied fuel oil because I didn't have cash. I was told to go away. I was treated, I'll never forget how I was treated. I was told by the owner of the company, do you go charge your groceries? No. You go to the grocery store, you have money. Do you charge, this and this? No. No, you cannot get any credit for fuel oil. So
yeah, that's very common now.
right. And it was several years ago, yes. So there we were, and I remember being out of fuel, and a friend heard of this, and I'm not quite sure how she heard of it, but she mailed an electric blanket to us, which you can stay pretty doggone warm on your electric blankets. And I have never forgotten that kind act. And I'll tell you, clue everybody in on a little something I've been doing since this recession, whatever you want to call it, started in preparation for all the blankets that have gone on sale at Walmart and whatnot. $5 you can get, you could before. I've been stockpiling and giving them away to people that I know who are going to need it. And if we do any little thing, we don't have to have thousands of dollars or hours and hours of time. It's just do something.
Right.
Do
Absolutely.
something. Do one thing that's decent a day.
Yep.
And I love that. And we will be helping children of abuse, parents who are dealing with children of abuse. We will be dealing
Law
with
enforcement
abuse survivors.
officers who deal with
Yes, we will
abuse
be
on a
helping
daily basis
everyone.
who help people. Yeah.
Get a $10 McDonald's gift card and drop it off to a police officer. They eat. They
Yeah.
need
And
encouragement.
they appreciate encouragement.
do.
Trust me.
Ministers,
They do not get it
I
much.
think you'd probably appreciate, any, all of us would, anybody would. I was in line at Starbucks. I've limited myself, by the way, to one Starbucks every 2 weeks because of the cost. But somebody ahead of me waved. That person knew me. I pull up to pay, and the girl said, "You're already paid for." And I thought, oh, that's so nice. I wanted to pay it forward, and I did. And if we just get the ball rolling like that, we will be making tread marks in the ground of advocacy, of decency, of human kindness. It just spreads like a fire.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And we need that
Yes.
encouragement. And well, not we. I shouldn't say we.
Everybody,
I'm just saying that
we,
collectively.
we,
But
everybody.
especially people who've lived under oppression and any kind of
Right.
abuse, they really need people to be there for them.
Maybe they don't need a physical blanket, but how about covering them with words of warmth and kindness?
Sure.
Be
Yeah.
a blanket in that
Yeah,
way.
it doesn't have to cost any money
No.
just to exercise
No. Right.
decency. So, yeah, go out and do something for somebody. There are plenty of
something,
people.
yeah.
You don't have
Yeah.
to go far, trust me.
No.
But I think if we all start, like you said, practice this once a day, just do something decent for someone every single day. Can you imagine if that really spreads?
Explosion would be so
I
beautiful.
think people would feel
it would be
yeah.
so incredibly beautiful when we do that one kind deed, or whatever you want to call it, decent deed. We feel better too. We view life a lot differently also.
Yeah.
We begin to see the good, the kindness, the truth in people, and instead of only the dark.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's our message to you.
Be a sunbeam.
Yeah,
How about
definitely.
it?
And
Yes.
I think, because again, we get asked that question constantly. What can I do? How do
Right.
I enter the world of advocacy?
Right.
Be
This
kind.
yeah. Be
But
decent.
I mean,
be
that's
kind,
honestly, it's no more
Right.
complicated than that.
Right. It isn't.
Be aware of the people around you and
Right.
what their needs are, and people who are lonely and hurt and anxious and depressed and sorrowful and all those things. Be aware of those people. They're out there. Trust me. And just
All over.
be kind to them. Be
Right.
decent. So anyway, thank you guys so much, and we're looking forward to the next episode.
Well, this is a
in this-
holiday month.
in the
Is
season.
it-
I was going to say
yes, the
it's
season.
we didn't plan this
And
intentionally because it's the
no,
month of
but-
Thanksgiving, but
Yeah.
I don't want to hear. Probably going to block some of these posts that I see about Christopher Columbus is, and the Pilgrims were awful humans.
Who
Like,
really cares? Really? Yes.
honestly,
Yeah.
spend
the
that
end of the
time,
day.
save that energy, and
Yeah.
just be nice to people.
Yep.
If you don't care to tap into our history, then whatever. Who cares? But use that time
Right.
to smile, breathe, smile,
Absolutely.
nurture
Absolutely.
somebody, care for
Yes.
somebody,
Yes.
and bring a smile to their face. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you next episode.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.